Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. I gave it a few days before recording and posting this video because the emotions were obviously pretty high immediately following Thursday night's game. When I finished my offensive line grading for the week, I had posted a teaser on X for this video saying that the line was probably better than what you may think. As you might imagine, there was plenty of negative reactions. And here's a few. And for the first time, I'm going to cover up the names because the goal of this video and this channel as a whole is to continue to share my opinions on offensive line play and to provide context around those opinions. You can see here that I've been accused of dick riding the offensive line, glazing the O-line. The bottom right image was a GIF of a door getting slammed in the guy's face. And of course, the overreaction of how bad the individual pieces of the offensive line and the statement that even Patrick Mahomes couldn't win behind this offensive line. What I find interesting is that most of the time when I ask exactly what their issues were with the offensive line, it either becomes quiet or you get a knee-jerk response with no real thought. So all I'm asking for today is, if you were in the same frame of mind as these guys, just give me a chance. I'm not trying to argue that this is a top 5 offensive line. The line and its performance on Thursday is more than adequate enough to win with, though. Obviously, the biggest thing coming out of Thursday's game is Tua's health. But immediately after saying all their well wishes, the attention turned to the offensive line and how bad it was. In my previous videos, I went through each player and shared their grade, along with a couple of plays to explain those grades. I'm going to take a different approach this week. Instead, we're going to go through the play-by-play and discuss where things went wrong and right so you can have a complete picture of where the offensive line ranks for issues that led to the lopsided loss against the Bills. At the end of the video, I'll share the grades that I have for each of the players, and they're probably going to be better than what you might have expected. But when you go through and watch the All-22 film, it really comes to a bad play here, a bad play there by individual linemen versus a poor performance by any individual or the offensive line as a whole. If I had to find somewhere to place some blame for what happened on Thursday night, one of those would be the Dolphins equipment managers. You can't say it was the field because Buffalo didn't seem to have the same issues with the footing as what the Dolphins did. It's completely unacceptable for field conditions to be a disadvantage for the team at home. And then another big one for me was that I didn't agree with some of the situational play calling and some of the personnel decisions. And we'll get into some of that with the videos as well. But outside of the things on the field, those were a couple of things that I felt were even bigger impacts than the way the offensive line played. With that said, let's get into the first drive, and we'll start to look at some of the videos also. All right, first drive of the game here. Dolphins started the game with the ball. We're going to get 1st and 10, short pass to Waddle for 3 yards. Then we're going to get a 6-yard gain by Achane. We're going to get a fullback dive by Ingold for 3 yards. And then we're going to get to this play that was a negative 3-yard run by Achane. When we watch this play, you'll see the offensive line actually does a decent job and that Achane should be able to get to the edge, but Julian Hill, coming in motion as the lead blocker there, completely whiffs on his block. So now we're looking at 2nd and 13, and then we get a deep shot to Tyreek Hill into double coverage. That was one of those plays that just didn't make sense to me. Why take a shot on 2nd and 13 instead of trying to get into a 3rd and manageable? So that takes us to one of the key plays in this game early, and this is a 3rd and 13. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are not on the field at all. on your first drive, on your first 3rd and long. I can't explain that. But then we throw it to Grant DuBose, who is recently signed, who isn't even looking for the ball, and this ball bounces off of his shoulder pads and results in an interception. Okay, so that's drive 1. I'm pretty sure that we can all say that nothing happened on that drive that we would say the offensive line is not good enough. Second drive, we're going to go through this one pretty quick because it does end in a touchdown. Starts out with Tua throwing a screen pass to Jonnu Smith for 15 yards. We get Jalen Waddle running a counter reverse for 4 yards. I did think that he passed up a lane that could have been more. So we're at 2nd and 6. It's a jet pass to Tyreek Hill for 10 yards. Back to 1st and 10. We have a false start called on Julian Hill. So now 1st and 15. Achane hits a crack toss for 14 yards. 2nd and 1. We get a really good looking long trap play. Another 8 yards for Achane to get to 1st and 10 again. Now here we get a high snap. And Tua did corral this one, but it threw off the timing of the play a little bit. So we're looking at 2nd and 10. We get a check down to Jeff Wilson, 3rd and 4. And this was the play where Tua climbed up in the pocket, hit Jalen Waddle kind of on the run, and Waddle got down fairly close to the end zone. Next play, we get a false start by Liam Eichenberg. Play after that is 1st and goal from the 6, and it's an Achane run for 1 yard. But if you go back and look at that one, it is a insert type play where Durham Smythe runs into Teron Armstead instead of leading through the gap that was available and, getting more than 1 yard for sure. But that all brings us to the touchdown pass here. And as clean as it looked, look at Austin Jackson at right tackle here. You can see that when he sets, he looks like he's on skates. And this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about with the field. Now, he may have been setting wide, understanding these passing concepts a little bit, that they want this end to go to the inside. And you get what JT O'Sullivan calls a balloon concept going to the right here, where you got Ingold leading and Achane coming behind. And that way, Tua really doesn't have to see this before throwing because he knows that he has Ingold out there to protect Achane. So this drive as a whole wasn't perfect, had a high snap, had a couple of false starts, had a missed assignment on the Smythe play, and had a not great pass block here by Austin Jackson, but nobody did anything heroic on this play, and we're still able to turn to 7 points. So the line had some issues on this drive, so did some other guys, but nothing was catastrophic. Drive 3, scores tied 7-7, 1st and 10, going to get an outside zone left run. Durham Smythe is going to get tossed by A.J. Epinesa. Going to follow that up 2nd and 9, and that ends up getting covered up by a jet reverse by Tyreek Hill going for 12 yards. So now we're looking at 1st and 10. And now we get the pass that was intended for Robbie Chosen. And we could debate whether Chosen slipped here or whether he ran the wrong route. But what you can't debate here is that the offensive line had nothing at all to do with this interception. That is a great pocket that Tua is throwing from. And as we look at the first 3 drives now, 2 of them ended in interceptions, and there was nothing that the offensive line did that really, cost them the way that some of the other stuff has during this game. Going ahead to drive 4, so now the score is 10-7. Very first play of the drive here. We're going to see a outside zone to the left. And once again, looking at Durham Smythe here, we see the turf monster popping up, and we have another one of our players slipping, resulting in a shorter play than what it should have been. So then we're at 2nd and 7. That's going to be Jalen Wright running for a 9-yard gain, and it gets called back for a hold on Teron Armstead that I thought was a pretty weak call, but you're going to get that from time to time. So 2nd and 17, we get a pass complete to Janu Smith on kind of a shovel screen type play, and then we get to 3rd and 3, and that's what we have here. And on this play, Robert Jones does get beaten. And that's what I mean. I'm not going to say that the offensive line is perfect, right? But at the same time, if you look at the two patterns that are coming directly in front of Tua, Tyreek Hill is very well covered, and right underneath that is Jalen Waddle for a very easy completion. Again, this was 3rd and 3. We didn't have to throw this ball 10 yards downfield. So yes, Robert Jones got beat. Robert Jones deserves some of the blame for this play. But even with that mistake, if we just hit the open target there, then that doesn't matter at all. All right, so the Bills go down and score. So now we're trailing 17-7. Starting 1st and 10, we get Devon Achane up the middle on a really good looking power run here. And then we get a couple of duo runs up the middle by Achane for gains of 5 and 4. And we get to 3rd down. And on 3rd down here, so I want you to watch the linebacker that is currently lined up between Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones. And watch how when Tanner Connor comes in motion, everybody shifts over, and that linebacker is the one who is able to shoot the gap to tackle Alec Ingold. So this is an example of, I feel like sometimes Mike McDaniel is trying to see if he can outsmart himself. There was a good look for this play pre-snap, and then they run a motion that brings that linebacker over and makes it tougher for, it was Liam's guy, it was Eichenberg's guy, right? But as that linebacker is going over, now he's more of in a chase position as opposed to trying to cut him off. I feel like had there not been motion on this play, we're probably looking at another short yardage conversion. So that brings us to 4th and 2. And the issue that I have with this play call is that we know that the offensive line is not a great pass blocking offensive line. And I understand that running the ball on 4th and 2 is highly unlikely. But when you go empty in this situation and don't even show a threat of a run, then you're telling the defensive line that they can just tee off on the offensive line here. And that's exactly what ends up happening. Ed Oliver tees off on Robert Jones, ends up blowing him back into Tua, and gets the sack. So, again, I'm not excusing Robert Jones. He's got to be better than that. But at the same time, I think this was an opportunity where they could have protected this line some just by having a running back in the backfield that the defensive line had to respect. And that, of course, was the 4th and 2 attempt that Miami did not convert, and that was followed up by James Cook running for a 49-yard touchdown. So even though Rob Jones had some blame in terms of this play resulting in a sack, he had nothing at all to do with the defense giving up a 49-yard touchdown on the very first play after the turnover on downs, and now the Dolphins are down 24-7. All right, heading into drive 6. This was the drive right before the half. Started with 3 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. So kind of had to move a little bit with this. First play here, we're going to get Rob Jones, who can't get to the block on the screen. But at the same time, you've also got Waddle, who can't make a guy miss. We're paying Waddle a lot of money, and I expect more out of him than I do out of Rob Jones. I would like to see Rob Jones make that play, but if you're going to put the blame on Rob Jones, then you should probably have some higher expectations for Waddle as well to be able to make one guy miss. But that doesn't really matter because we follow that up with Achane getting a 13-yard gain on a screen, getting it back to 1st and 10. Then we get an inside zone and an outside zone for a total of 8 yards. We get to 3rd and 2, and a little quick out to Jonnu Smith converts another first down. 1st and 10. Now there's a minute and 3 on the clock from the 45-yard line. Get another short pass to Achane on a check down. We have a negative 5-yard play on a cracked toss, and that was, again, due to a high snap that threw off the timing on that, and Achane kind of had to hesitate there. We get the Tua scramble for 11 yards down the left sideline. Had Robert Jones making a pretty good late adjustment on that allowed Tua to escape the pocket. Then we get a middle screen to Jeff Wilson. That gets the ball down to the 29, 2nd and 4 with 21 seconds left. Then we hit a slant to Tyreek Hill for 6 yards. We're back to 1st and 10. We are on the Buffalo 23, but now there's only 16 seconds left. So they hit a quick out to Jonnu Smith for 7 yards. And then we get to essentially the last play of the half for the offense. And this was just going to be, an escape lane's available. Tua throws that out of bounds, just trying to keep time on the clock to be able to kick the field goal to make it 24-10 instead of 24-7. So that wraps it up for the first half. And I welcome you to go through and go play by play and kind of do the same thing that we did here. But I think that what you'll find is that as many mistakes as the Dolphins offensive line made, there were none that were really that severe in terms of the overall outcome of the game. When you look at any of the missed blocks by the offensive line, there were missed blocks by the tight ends that were just as impactful. There were interceptions that were thrown that were obviously more impactful. You had bigger plays on defense. So, as I said from the beginning of this video, I am not trying to tell you that this offensive line is a perfect offensive line, but I am trying to make the case for you that this is an offensive line that you can win with. All right, so as we move into the second half here, Rob Jones is out from the very beginning, and we're back to Lester Cotton in the starting lineup at left guard. We started out with a power up the middle to Achane, and there was a missed block on that, either by Smythe or Cotton. Doesn't matter. Then we get a play action check down to Achane for 12 yards. We get a outside zone to the right for 4 yards. We get Achane running outside zone to the right side. And on this play, you'll see that Austin Jackson looks lost on this play. I'm not sure who he should have been going to, but he doesn't get to anybody and just looks lost out there. But even with that, the bigger issue on this play is Julian Hill out there at tight end, and as he gets out there on the linebacker, he's not able to stay connected with it, and that's who ends up sliding off to make the play. So, yes, we had a mistake from Austin Jackson here, but it wasn't the biggest mistake on this play. And this play, only going for 1 yard, is not on the offensive line. So now we get to probably the worst play of the game. And left side of the line here is Kendall Lamb because Teron Armstead is out again, and Lester Cotton. If you go back and look at the preseason snaps, Kendall Lamb only had a couple of snaps at left tackle because they were trying to get Patrick Paul as many reps as they could. Lester Cotton did not play on the left side at all. So What do the Bills do here? Well, they're going to run a stunt to that side. And guess what? Two guys who started the night on the bench do not do a great job picking up this blitz. I think Cotton actually does a better job than Lamb here. Had Lamb been able to hold his ground, it would give somewhere for Tua to step up. I'd also put some expectations on Tua here to know that he's got Jeff Wilson leaking out on the right side here that he could have checked down. Instead, we get Tua trying to throw off of his back foot from the far hash all the way out of bounds, which made no sense at all. And of course, the Bills have a linebacker sitting there waiting for it, picks it off, runs it back for 6. So yes, this play was very bad by the offensive line, but very bad by 2 backup offensive linemen who had just come into the game. And while this could have been a sack, and instead was compounded by Tua making an awful decision and resulting in a pick 6. So go ahead and blame the offensive line for this all you want, but the worst thing that should have happened here was a sack and a punt. Now they're down 31-10. Obviously get the ball back quickly after a pick 6 and get some decent stuff going on the next drive. So you get Tyreek Hill on a screen for 8 yards, get a cracked toss, get a missed assignment there either by Armstead or Ingold, resulting in -2. Follow that up with a pass to Jalen Waddle for 21 yards. And then we get a missed pass to Tyreek Hill on the left sideline, get a really well-blocked cracked toss for 8 yards. We're at 3rd and 2, and then we're going to dive with Achane instead of Ingold this time. And that brings us to this play. And this is just a bad miss by Tua, right? Regardless of everything else that happened on this drive, all we have to do is hit Julian Hill here, and it's 7 points. So again, you can blame the offensive line all you want, but we're talking about the quarterback that we're paying as a franchise quarterback, and he's got to be able to make this throw. And if he makes this throw, then nobody cares at all what the offensive line did on this play. Sorry, on the drive as a whole. This is the first play of Skyler Thompson. We all know what happened on the previous play, but still an opportunity to score here. And this is going to be a inside zone with some split flow action. And we're going to see Aaron Brewer trying to block back on that one technique. And he doesn't do a great job blocking that. But if you watch Achane, right, there's another slip, right? Without that slip, we know how slippery Achane can be. And there's a decent chance that he hits that hole quick enough that Brewer's block is adequate. So then we fast forward 2 more plays. So we're at 3rd and 8 here. And we essentially get a throwaway to Tyreek Hill. I didn't agree with this play because it seemed like it was mostly a one-read play. And, we went through the Tyreek Hill fade ball thing last year, and it just didn't work out. So we're talking about one play which, with a bigger receiver, maybe you still throw this, maybe you still make it a jump ball opportunity. Instead, on 3rd and 8 in 4-down territory, we essentially surrender a play, moving straight to 4th and 8. Next play, both Eichenberg and Jackson get beat really bad, and I'm not going to try to excuse them for this. What I'll say about this drive as a whole is that obviously the Tua injury was a huge factor in this. I'm sure that Mike McDaniel did not have play calls ready for Skyler Thompson and didn't have play calls ready to protect the offensive line with Skyler Thompson in the lineup. So if I'm looking at this from a 1,000-foot view, even though the Dolphins didn't score here, being down 31-10, I'm really not putting a whole lot of stock into how this drive finished up. And now we're getting into the 10th drive of the night. And to be honest, I would throw away everything that happened for the entire team at this point in the game. You're down 31-10 in the fourth quarter. You have no idea how long your starting quarterback's going to be out. And you're looking at Skyler Thompson trying to mount a comeback. So at this point, it really should have just been more about trying to find a little bit of momentum and get out of this game. I mean, at 31-10, did anybody really think we were going to win this game? So at the same time, right, this type of situation is putting the offensive line in a poor position. Like I said earlier, this line was not built to be a pass blocking offensive line. So when you get down 31-10 with a backup quarterback, with two backups in the lineup on the offensive line, this is just a recipe for disaster no matter what. With that said, we're going to kind of speed through these last two drives of the game. So we get Skyler Thompson going back to that balloon route to Achane. Ingold misses his block, ends up only being a 1-yard gain. We get a check down to Achane for 15 yards. We get a incomplete pass to Grant DeBose, and this was a situation where it was a good read. The defensive back knocked DeBose off of his path, but I still like to see that from Thompson. We get a little stick route from Janu Smith for 6 yards. Then we go for another pass to Janu that Thompson's just off target on, throws it behind Janu Smith. Get a false start from Liam Eichenberg. So that puts us in a 4th and 9 situation here, and that's the play that we're looking at. And this offensive line, even with all of the issues that they've had and the different pieces, they do a decent job of picking up this blitz, and they actually give Skyler Thompson an opportunity to run for this first down. And maybe if he stays to the outside, he gets it. I don't mind him cutting back up. You never really expect that player pursuing to get there. But, I'm not going to say that this play failed because of the offensive line. The offensive line did enough to allow a mobile quarterback to get on the move. Last drive of the game here, another quick one. This was actually a 6-minute drive. So again, the Dolphins were not in a hurry. They were looking just to get out of this game. So start out with a Austin Jackson false start. Then we get a complete pass over the middle to Chosen for 5 yards on a check down. We get a -4 on a outside zone where Smythe is tossed by the defensive end. We get a check down to Achane for 16 yards. We get another 6-yard gain by Achane. That was a decent gain. Probably should have stayed to the outside based on the way the linemen were blocking that one. Get a deep pass to Achane. Had a missed block on that by either Eichenberg or Brewer, depending on how you're looking at it. We get a run by Jalen Wright. It was a -1 yard -1 yard result, but that was an opportunity where Jalen Wright needed to be able to read the blocks better and put his foot in the ground and get upfield. Then we get a couple of good pockets on throws to DeBose for 13 yards, an incompletion to Hill, a short one to Durham Smythe. We get one thrown behind Robbie Chosen, but it was a decent pocket. And then we get here to the last play of the game offensively for the Dolphins. And this is Lester Cotton just getting abused by number 98 here. But what I'll say about this, similar to one of the ones by Tua earlier, this was a 4th and 2 play. And in the same line of sight that we have for the pass to Robbie Chosen, you have Janu Smith sitting right there at the 6-yard line on what would have been a fourth down conversion, and instead we're throwing a jump ball to Robbie Chosen in double coverage. All right, we went through that really quick, and I probably highlighted more negative stuff than positive considering the case that I'm trying to make. But if you're looking at this with an open mind, I think you can walk through this game and see that we don't need an amazing offensive line to be successful versus good teams. We just need to make the routine plays when they're there. And if you do that, this offensive line is plenty good enough to win with. Now that we got all of that out of the way, we're going to breeze through the grades. And at this point, either you see where I'm coming from and you trust my opinion at least somewhat, or you agree with the tweets that I shared earlier. Either way, here you go. So the first thing is that it's an 8.32 overall grade, and that's a little lower than what the grade was last week, but it's still a pretty good showing compared to what we had a lot of the times last year. We're going to go from lowest graded to highest, and I don't think I'm going to get too much pushback that Rob Jones was the lowest graded player we've had so far. And this is 2 weeks in a row that he really struggled. I saw him as somebody coming into the season that I felt should be the lead candidate at right guard when Wynn was available, assuming that Wynn is indeed the left guard. Through 2 weeks, I would say that Liam Eichenberg looks like a much better option than Rob Jones. My next guy was Kendall Lamb coming in at a 7.67. And when I saw the PFF grades and I saw that Kendall Lamb was one of their higher rated linemen, I'd be really interested in doing a comparison with them because he didn't play a ton of snaps. He only played 30 snaps that I graded from what I'm looking at. But I felt like he had enough, bad to really bad plays that there's no way that I would consider him among the top graded linemen in this game. Next, we had Lester Cotton still below the average for this week at an 8.01. And this was a situation, as kind of is normal with Lester Cotton, that, he has some really bad losses. He's not athletic enough for this scheme. Still kind of puzzling as to how he is the next option, but he just kind of is what he is, and I don't expect him to ever really grade high when he's in the lineup. Next one's going to be Austin Jackson, and again, still just below the average here. I think a lot of people agree that he did not have his best game. I don't think it was a awful game. Had a couple of really noticeable losses, but you can't look at those losses and use that to summarize his performance throughout the game because he did have some really good plays in this game as well. And then we got Aaron Brewer, who has an identical grade to Austin Jackson, and same idea here. He had some bad plays that cost him, but overall it was a solid performance. He had some snaps that created some timing issues. He can play better. I expect that he would play better in a game that is close, where the run game is still a threat. We know that Aaron Brewer is not the best pass blocker. He's also not the worst in the NFL, but this is another player that is always going to be better when you're in a situation where the run is still a true threat. Then we get Liam Eichenberg, and people probably aren't going to like this one. One thing you got to keep in mind with my grade is that I don't take penalties into account, and I've explained that in a previous video. Maybe someday I'll figure out a way that I'm comfortable in including that I still feel is fair. But if you take the penalties out, I had Liam coming in at an 8.61 and having a pretty good day overall. And then, of course, at the top, as usual, Teron Armstead coming in at 9.22. Of course, he didn't play the entire game. Have no idea what that means going forward. I tweeted out on Thursday night that if Teron Armstead cannot play, then I would much prefer to see Patrick Paul come in at left tackle rather than continuing to play Kendall Lamb there. Um, I think that Kendall Lamb is a okay backup, and I see I have his name spelled wrong here, but I don't think that he is a starting caliber player. I think that he's still somebody to keep on the roster in case we need a right tackle. But whenever Teron Armstead is not in at left tackle, I think it's time to give Patrick Paul some snaps and see what he can do. All right, that's all I've got. This video is going to be longer than most of my videos, and if you're still listening, you understand why. As always, I encourage you to leave comments below, and I also encourage you to come find me on X, and let's keep talking offensive line. Have a good one.